Hey everyone, Brian Chrisman here at a Kierkegaardian Reading of the Gospel of Mark. Today, because I received uh, the cover design for my second volume coming out this summer, I'm going to introduce the second volume, which is called I See Men as Trees Walking, which is from Mark chapter 8, verse 24, where Jesus healed a blind man, and it was a two-stage healing. It took, well, let me read about it. I talk about it in, got to scroll here so I can read this, but this is on the back cover of my book, and this introduces the book. This is the little synopsis. He took the blind man by the hand, and when he had spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" He said, "I see men, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he saw everything clearly. Mark's account of a blind man needing two healing touches from Jesus graphically depicts the stubborn blindness of his disciples. Peter epitomized this blindness when he was tempted by the popular view that Jesus was the Rome-conquering Savior of Israel rather than the suffering servant of God. Also, the disciples didn't understand that Jesus miraculously fed the famished crowds with a few loaves and fish to meet immediate need and provide leftover fragments of food for future need. Salvation was pictured for all time. Essentially, Mark's gospel gathered leftovers, historical fragments of Jesus' life, to convey God's salvation across history to those Kierkegaard called the follower at second hand. Like Peter, disciples and even the crowd are tempted to false, quote, salvations where self is lost. But ironically, persons only become a self by taking up their own cross, enabled by Jesus' second touch. So there's kind of a nod in there to Kierkegaard's philosophical fragments when I talk about historical fragments. And of course, I explain all that in the book, the connection there. And there's, so this is I See Men as Trees Walking, Mark chapters 5 to 8, subtitled The Crowd and Untruth, the Single Individual and Becoming a Self. Very Kierkegaardian terms in the subtitle. And I want to read quickly I got three great guys who I say are scholars and gentlemen all, to endorse this book, to read it and endorse it. And so the first is John Sanders, who's a well-known theologian, professor. He says, "This book brings the insights of the great Christian writer Soren Kierkegaard into conversation with several stories in the Gospel of Mark. Doing so illuminates both what is going on in the lives of the characters who interact with Jesus, as well as the point of the stories Jesus tells to shed light on what it means to follow Jesus in the modern world." And then J. Aaron Simmons, who endorsed Behold My Mother and My Brethren also, and he's an administrator in this group, or in my Kierkegaard Bonhoeffer group. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up with my social media things. J. Aaron Simmons writes, "Kierkegaard claimed that the Bible is not just a book that we read, but a book that reads us. It holds a mirror up to our selfhood and requires the hard work of self-examination. Brian Chrisman's Kierkegaardian analysis of the Gospel of Mark does the same thing by inviting not only a deeper understanding of the biblical text, but a better relationship to one's own becoming." And some of the things he says there were things I talked about in the beginning of Behold My Mother and My Brethren also. Obviously, there's overlap in these books and volumes, as you would expect. And then Christopher Barnett, who also endorsed my first book, he wrote, "Kierkegaard once said that reading the Bible is not an exercise in bland scholarship, but rather a spiritual practice whereby one enters into an intimate, edifying relationship with God. Brian Chrisman has taken this claim to heart, indeed in striking fashion. His Kierkegaardian commentary on the Gospel of Mark is insightful and provocative, but it's also earnest and searching. It likely won't find its way into an historical critical guide to the New Testament, but like Kierkegaard himself, Chrisman is just fine with that." I really like that little ending there. So a big shout out to those three guys for their wonderful endorsements and willingness to do this to me, who is without authority, more so even than Kierkegaard was. But yeah, I'm fine with it. This isn't going to make it into a historical critical guide, although I do my best to try to portray some of what Mark historically, critically was getting at, in a sense, or maybe more existentially. Anyway, that's a whole big question that I won't get into. So anyway, I hope you like the cover. I'll post it in a comment that you can see click on it, and hopefully you can see it well. And so this is a sneak preview of second volume coming out. And I'm thinking about, I was going to have this book giveaway, maybe this volume that I'll give away. And, you know, like I was saying, when I get to have a certain number of followers, I'll have this giveaway. And so maybe it makes more sense to not have it on the first volume, which presumably some of you may have, and that's why you're following. But this will be an incentive to continue reading, following, you know, this Kierkegaardian Reading of the Gospel of Mark video series on YouTube to accompany the book. So anyway, I think the giveaway may be the second volume coming out, I think, this summer. So thank you for your time. God bless, and I'm glad you joined me here. And please like and subscribe and share. Thank you very much.